You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Well, they say you can't win them all, and trust me, we're not going to get on too many of these Braves postcasts and keep reminding you of that. But the Atlanta Braves were unable to finish off the sweep of the Washington Nationals to open up the season and suffered a 4-1 loss on Sunday, unfortunately, in a Major League debut for Jared Shuster. We got a lot to talk about here on the Braves postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. But before we get started, I want to remind you to subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta right here on YouTube. Click that bell so you get notified every time that we drop a new episode. And there's all kinds of great sports coverage of the Atlanta teams that you know and love right here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. As for the team that we know pretty well, Jake Mastroianni and Graham McAuley with you to talk about a disappointing 4-1 loss for the Atlanta Braves today. And let's start with the news of the day, Jake. And it was Jared Shuster making his MLB debut. Might have had a couple of nerves and things going on there in the first inning.
Yeah, for a guy who pounded the strike zone all spring training, not like him, what we saw, especially in that first inning with all the walks. So, yeah, even he kind of admitted after the game, nerves getting to him a little bit, but he still, obviously has to do better. But, yeah, unfortunately for him, just didn't have that control early on.
Yeah, and we'll talk about some of the downs, and along with, I think, a couple of maybe encouraging things that he can take into his next start in a moment. Before we dive into his complete start, though, let's look at the line score of this one. Braves dropped to 2-1 as they lose the finale of this 3-game set. A run on just 4 hits, not a great day for the offense either. 5 men left aboard. Nats grabbed their first win of the year. They are now 1-2. 4 runs, 6 hits, no errors, 5 men left on base. And with a 4-run first inning, it's really all that took to make a winner out of Mackenzie Gore, who was making his Nationals debut in this one. He was traded over there from San Diego last year. He grabs his first win in a Nats uniform. Jared Shuster takes the loss, obviously the first of his career. Kyle Finnegan with the save, a game that lasted 2 hours, 17 minutes. A crowd of 21,440 were on hand to see it. So, Jake, let's talk a little bit about Jared Shuster and kind of the tale of 2 starts really for him. It was a 26-pitch first inning in which the first 6 batters reached, and he found himself down by a bunch of runs very early. But I thought what he did after that said as much about Jared Shuster's ability to make some adjustments on the fly and maybe help himself out and give himself at least a little bit of momentum into his next start.
Yeah, if you're Jared Shuster, you're a Braves fan, I think you have to be encouraged by what you saw after that first inning. Look, that first inning was just something that just snowballed on him, and he could have easily not gotten out of that first inning and had an even worse start. But for him to come back and not only come back, but able to keep the Nationals where they were and work into the 5th inning. I mean, I thought it was definitely something good that you can take away in what was, otherwise, a bad first major league start for him. But again, for me, it was just the command. I mean, it was something he's been known for in his career and how he got the job in spring training. It's just that command, but 5 walks. I mean, that's just not what we're used to seeing from Jared Shuster. But I talked about this on yesterday's postcast. They can all look great in the minors and in spring training. You never know how that mental hurdle is going to go once the bright lights are on. And I'm not saying Jared Shuster is not going to get there, but again, self-admittedly for himself, I think it did get to him a little bit, kind of lost his control and feel for his pitches here and there. But again, I still like what we saw after that, and it's very encouraging. I think he's going to at least probably get another start here.
Yeah, he should get another start. Alex Anthopoulos indicating before the Max Fried injury that it was both Shuster and Dodd with an opportunity to make at least 2 turns through the rotation. So we do expect to see that. And look, they're not all going to be this bad, we wouldn't imagine, and they're not all going to start out this way. I think that to kind of build on what you were talking about with the lights on bright, I always heard down in the minor leagues when they start stacking those decks up and those stadiums get a little bit bigger, the moment becomes a little bit bigger as well, but not necessarily too big once you've had a chance to get used to it. And now Jared Shuster has had that. But this first inning, this was not what he was looking for. Lane Thomas a single, Joey Meneses a single, Yaimer Candiario gets a walk. Then you've got a Dominic Smith single, a Keibert Ruiz walk, and then Alex Call with a walk. And those last 2 with the bases loaded, that's pretty tough just in any way you want to look at it. Bases loaded walks in general, 5 of those in the game. Just not a great outing for him at the start. But what I thought really happened in that second, third, and fourth inning was the defense started doing some work for him, and we started seeing Jared Shuster get in and around and ahead of hitters a little bit more than he did in that first frame, and I think that's going to help him out moving forward. The Braves offense, though, wasn't able to do that thing that we always talk about. Hey, why don't you go out and get this kid a bunch of runs so he doesn't have to deal with these nerves either? So you can't really pin it all on Jared Shuster, but the Nats went up 4-0 in the first, and that was all they needed to win this game because the offense was kind of in absentia for the Braves today.
Yeah, chalk it up to that Sunday day game. Here we go again, right? I mean, saw a lot of that on Twitter already, but yeah, unfortunately, the offense just wasn't there. Had some opportunities, 3 double plays in this game hit into by the Braves. That's killer right there, big rally killers. So other than Travis d'Arnaud, who had a big hit to knock in a run to give the Braves their only run, and he was great all series long, Braves just couldn't come up with that big hit. Like I said, they had some leadoff base runners. They had some guys get on, but just couldn't find that big hit, couldn't get that 2-3 run homer to really get back in the game, unfortunately. So, yeah, offense couldn't get it going, couldn't back up Jared Shuster, but still, I never felt like they were out of the game because of that lineup. You felt like you were a bloop and a blast away from being right back in it the entire time.
And they were quite a few times, I feel like, starting to maybe get a little something going. And as you mentioned, grounding into 3 double plays in this game really short-circuited those rallies. Travis d'Arnaud with the RBI single that came in the 4th inning, so they were able to get a run back for Jared Shuster. He went back out in the 5th, though, and was unable to continue beyond that after issuing another walk. But after a 26-pitch first inning for him, 44 pitches to get himself through the next 3 frames. Hopefully that is going to be a little bit more what we can expect out of Jared Shuster. And hopefully the Braves lineup will look a little bit more like the team that scored 7 runs in back-to-back games to open up the season. That would certainly be helpful as well. Now, one thing we got to look at in this game, Jake, and it wasn't the bat of Sean Murphy, but it was the arm of Sean Murphy. We saw it in the 4th inning with a caught stealing of Luis Garcia, pop time of 1.86 seconds. We knew it was elite. Now we've gotten to lay eyes on it in a regular season game. I think that's rather exciting.
It was very exciting. I hate that it's the most exciting thing that probably happened in this game today, but it was that exciting for the Braves. I mean, to see that on display. And again, we talked about it the other day. I know he's not hitting yet. I don't really concern myself with that as much, but you at least got to see what he can do for you behind the plate. You're seeing a lot more stolen bases already to start the season, and to have an arm like that behind there to not just throw out runners, but to keep runners from going and to keep them from even thinking about wanting to run on that arm is going to be something that pays big dividends for the Braves throughout the season. So yeah, it's a special arm back there. It is quite a cannon.
It's a big reason the Braves went out and got Sean Murphy to be a stolen base deterrent, to handle this pitching staff. And I know that there was a lot of discussion, and we've touched on it the last couple of nights. Like, what's this lineup going to look like going forward? I don't think anything's really set in stone yet. Sean Murphy not playing in the second game. I got some questions about that. And, we're all kind of, learning on the job here. We just know that these catchers aren't going to be out there every single day. But if I had to handicap it, I'd be interested to hear what you think. I feel like Sean Murphy's going to catch about 100 games this year, maybe a little bit more, with Travis d'Arnaud making the starts in the other one. Is that kind of the expectation that you have as far as the catching position, not the starts at DH?
Yeah, that was kind of my perception even coming in. I thought Murphy might even catch more than 100 games this year, because you traded for that value, what we saw on Sunday, that arm. I mean, you want him behind the plate. Now, in a 3-game series, I think he starts 2 and he sits 1, like we kind of saw in this one. I think that's going to be the norm, but I do think he gets at least 100 starts behind the plate. I mean, that's what makes him so valuable.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I do know that Travis d'Arnaud has a lot of value to the Braves for the, how familiar he is with his staff, how comfortable different pitchers are with Travis d'Arnaud. And I know that there's a big difference, defensively between Sean Murphy and a catcher of that ilk and a lot of other players. But I do think that Travis d'Arnaud is going to find his way behind the plate a very good amount this year for a couple of reasons. Number one, and I think the first and foremost for both these guys, is to keep them healthy, because this catching tandem has a chance to do something really special for the Braves this year. A season after they had their other catching tandem do some pretty special things, at least offensively speaking, for this club a season ago. So we'll see how that all breaks down. We did see Marcell Ozuna back in the lineup again today. And we did see the double catcher deal back in the lineup today. So we'll just kind of monitor how it goes along. I think that, not having to face a bunch of lefties also kept Eddie Rosario on the bench in this. And that I don't expect to be the norm once the Braves start facing more right-handers.
Yeah, I want to see Eddie in there more. And I know you had 2 lefties in this series, but I really want to see him try to get things going. And he had 1 start in the series, and it wasn't particularly great, but he's somebody I just think needs more at-bats, need more reps to get in there and see what he can do and see if he can get back to his old self, which I think he can. I think we saw signs of it in spring training and in the World Baseball Classic. But yeah, just unfortunate for him facing 2 lefties in this series, just didn't get a lot of playing time.
Well, the Braves are going to turn the page from this series on to their next road series before they'll be coming home to have their home opener on Thursday at Truist Park against the San Diego Padres. But what stands between them is 3 games against the St. Louis Cardinals, perennially one of the better teams in the National League Central, if not all of the National League. And we can probably expect to see that again Game one will be happening on Monday evening. It'll be right-hander Charlie Morton against Jake Woodford, who pitched in relief mostly for the Cardinals last year. Touching on Morton from a year ago, we know it was kind of a Jekyll and Hyde thing. 205 strikeouts for him, but a career high in home runs allowed. 9-6 record ERA, just under 4.5. 172 innings, though. Jake, I know I've told a lot of people this year, if you have Charlie Morton as your fourth starter, you must have a pretty good rotation. But now all of a sudden, with Max Fried being out, with Kyle Wright already out, I think there may be a little bit more focus on Charlie Morton having to be a bit more vintage than he was in 2022.
Yeah, it's the fourth game of the series, so obviously a lot more to be played. But as far as trying to win this series, you almost feel like Charlie Morton has to come up big in game one, because you're going to have another rookie going in game two, and then likely, Bryce Elder in game three of this series. So very important that Charlie Morton gets out, has a good start, try to get the Braves a win in the first game of this series. If they have, want to obviously improve their chances of winning this series, that'd be a great start there with Charlie having a good one and just getting things off to a good start. It was, an up and down season for him last year, as you mentioned, all the home runs, the hit batters, and just the walks as well. Want to see him kind of turn that corner and get back into the Charlie Morton we're used to seeing.
Yeah, and the Braves are happy to have Charlie Morton be a part of this stable of, in this rotation, but they're going to need him to step in and be that guy with a couple of pitchers down at the moment. And you mentioned with the possibility of Bryce Elder coming up to replace Max Fried, that seems like the very high likelihood. Braves, as of game time, had still not placed Max Fried on the injured list, though he did travel back home to Atlanta, so he's going to be receiving treatment. His comments after game one, he didn't sound overly concerned about the hamstring issue, but it also didn't sound like it was nothing either. So the Braves are going to play it safe, and it looks like Bryce Elder, who started opening night for Gwinnett on Friday, would get the turn in rotation in the finale against St. Louis, and we'll see what Dylan Dodd can do in his major league debut in the middle contest there. But to go back to what Jake had just said, grabbing game one of a series will certainly be helpful. The Braves will look to do that behind Charlie Morton as he takes on Jake Woodford, the right-hander for the Cardinals. 4-0 record last year, 2.23 ERA. Not a lot of strikeouts, though, only 24 of those in 48 and a third innings. You usually don't see microscopic ERAs and microscopic Ks per nine as well, but perhaps that will be something that we'll find out exactly what the secret to his success was a season ago. First pitch on Monday night up in St. Louis is set for 7:45 p.m. Eastern time. Again, Charlie Morton against Jake Woodford is your pitching matchup. Well, that'll bring us to the end of this edition of the Braves Postcast. As always, we appreciate you joining us here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Make sure you're subscribed here on YouTube. Click that bell. You'll get notified every time we drop a new episode. And the audio of each and every Braves Postcast is also available on Locked On Braves. Jake brings you great coverage all season long. Make sure you subscribe there wherever you get your podcast. Braves were unable to finish off a series sweep of the Washington Nationals, but they do take 2 out of 3. Jared Shuster, though, a loser in his major league debut, 4-1. The Nats beat the Braves in the finale. We'll be back at it as the Braves move on over to St. Louis to start a series on Monday. And until then, for Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. We'll catch you next time. So long, everyone.